Okay, today we're going to program what you can think of in some ways as our first real Java program. We've been programming in Java, but we haven't been using the functionality that Java was really created to embody, and that's object-oriented programming. So today we're going to create our first class in Java, and we're going to do it. We're going to do this gradually. We're going to do this in a way that is very non-Java-like, which is to say we're going to make all the variables of this class public so they can be changed from outside the class. And I'm just doing this to show that it's possible before we take a step back and realize that that's not what object-oriented programming is about anyway. And we're going to make the class more restrictive in the next example. So I'm going to create a class to hold the data for a particular kind of object. And the object I've chosen is just an album, like a CD or a record, a collection of music, however you consume your music, whether that's by Spotify or vinyl album or whatever. And a class in Java is a data structure designed to hold whatever data and methods you need that object to own, and whatever functions you need that object to be able to perform. So if we think about an album, we can ask, well, what does an album require as far as data? There's an artist, there's the title of the album, there's all the individual songs, which you could make an array list maybe. There's a release date, and maybe if I was creating a data structure for my own record collection, I would want like number of stars, like my rating, like a 4-star, 5-star rating or whatever. So I'm going to implement those variables as the instance variables, are sometimes called fields of my class. So I'm declaring the class this way. It's a public class. That means we can access it from anywhere in the program. It's static. It's a class, and the name of the class is album. So public static class album is the name of our class. And then we're going to define the variables that are the instance variables, or the fields, it's sometimes called. I will almost always call them instance variables of this class. So let's have an integer to represent the, I'm going to go ahead and put a tab here, the year that the album was released. And let's have, I spelled public wrong. Let's have a, oh my goodness, next line. There we go. Let's have a string for the artist. And I'm going to make these instance variables with capitals. And I'm just putting these tabs in here to line up my variable names to make it pretty. I'm going to have a string for the title of the album. And then a decimal value double. It could be a float, but I'm going to make it a double. For the rating. So like a 4-star, 4.5 stars, so it needs to be a decimal. And that's it. Those are my 4 instance variables. You can have as many of these as you want. Your class can be as complicated as it needs to be in order to hold all the data that you want your album objects to hold. And I want my class to have a method. I want it to be able to not just hold data, but do something with that data. And the obvious thing I could have this album object do is to print out the contents of its own data fields. So I'm going to create a public method. It's not going to return a value, so the void means it just does something. It doesn't do something and then return a number. And I'm going to call it print album. Okay. And it's not going to have any parameters. So let me add my brackets. I'm going to put a little comment here for myself. This bracket ends the print album method. Okay. set this up, make it look nice. So print album is just going to print the values of these pieces of data, and we'll do it in a nicely formatted way. I'm actually gonna, rather than having you watch me type this, I'm just gonna copy and paste this from my little scratch pad over here. So here's what the print album method does. System out print title plus by artist plus released plus year plus rating equals a certain number of stars. Okay, so it just prints out the title, the artist, the year, the rating in a nicely formatted string. And that's the whole method. So when I call that method of an album, it will print out that content. Notice that we're not printing out the content of the album object from the outside, the way we might in Python or C. We're printing it out from the inside. We're telling the album, print out your information, and that's the way you think about methods in Java. They are something that an object is doing to itself, or doing for itself, if you want to think about it that way. So here's my main. I'll go ahead and set my my class apart from my main. We'll do this in a more a clever way in a couple of examples later. Let me add some returns in here so we can scroll up for you guys so you're in the middle of the screen. And I'm just going to paste in some junk text here for the user. My name is Dave. Just a little hello world statement. I'll go ahead and just end it right here. Okay, let me run that. Run that. And it should just print my hello world and check for missing parentheses and semicolons and stuff. It looks like it's working fine. Okay. Now, what I have created here is a class. It is a kind of object. It is what classes are sometimes referred to as being a blueprint for an object. This is how you make an album. This is the data that it has. This is the methods that it has. We haven't made an album yet. We haven't made an object, which is an instance of the album class. Let's do that now. We can do this in 2 steps, or we can do this in 1 step. We can do it in 2 steps by saying, I'm going to create an album, and it's going to be called My Favorite Album. Oops. Tap. All this is doing is declaring that there will be an album, capitals, album object called My Favorite Album. This doesn't create the object. Okay. It just declares the name. To declare it, I will type My Favorite Album equals new album. Okay. So this actually creates the new album object. A new object of the album class with the name My Favorite Album. Okay? So you can do that in 2 steps. You can also do that in 1 step by just typing, I'm going to comment this line out, album, My Favorite Album equals new album. We've done this before with built-in classes for Java, right? This is how we create a scanner, my scanner equals new scanner, right? This is how we created random objects when we're using the random library. So this is something we've done before, but now we're doing it with our own class. You will most often see it done like this, but we can do it either way. And we'll go back once we create our object. We'll show that they both work. Actually, let's go back to the 2-line way. There's something I like about the 2-line way, even though it's 2 lines of code instead of 1 line of code. There's something I like about declaring the name and then creating the object on separate lines. It's a little old-fashioned, but so am Now that we have the album, it's created, we could presumably call the print album class. Now we haven't put any data in it. What would happen if I said my favorite album, that's the object, if I spell it right, album, dot, print album, parentheses. That calls the print album method of the album class. Let's run that and see what it does. Null by null released 0, 0 stars. So the data structures exist, but I haven't put any values into them yet. But it does work. Title null, meaning a null string, an empty string. By null, the artist is an empty string. Released 0, the year is an empty integer. 0 stars rating, the rating is an empty float or an empty double. Let's fix that by putting some data into those fields. So my favorite album is the name of my object. I'm just going to type that 4 times. 2, 3, 4. I'm going to paste it 4 times so I don't have to type it over and over again. And I'm going to set each of its instance variables into some value. My favorite album.year equals 2014. Semicolon. My favorite album dot artist. These are the 4 instance variables of my class equals Taylor Swift. It's got to be in quotes because it's a string. My favorite album dot title equals 1989. That's the title, not a date. So it's a string, so it's in quotes. And the rating that I give it is, let's say, 4.5 stars out of 5. Okay. So this is how you access the instance variables of a class, of an object that's an instance of that class, if those variables are public, okay? Which I made them public so that we can do this. Right? This public here, when I declare these variables, means that even outside the class, outside the object, in main, I can have a line of code that accesses that year, that artist, that title, that rating. Okay? So now if I run my program, making my first Java class, title 1989 by Taylor Swift, released 2014, 4.5 stars. Okay, so that works. So I could create another album. I could create since we did it on one line, let's create a second album. So we'll call it my second favorite album. Oh, it's got to be one word, no space. No cap here. So let's create a new object of the album class called my second favorite album. And the way I do that is album. This is declaring the name, my second favorite album. And now we're going to create a new album with that name. Okay? So this creates my object. This creates another instance of the album class called my second favorite album. Okay? So now we have 2 albums. Let's just run this and make sure everything's still cool. No errors, no problems. Okay? Still Taylor Swift. Now I need to pick another album that I know the date to. Let's see. So let's create my second favorite album. I'm going to paste this 4 times so I don't have to type that big long variable name. This is kind of a preposterously long variable name. And then I'm going to put values into its 4 instance variables, which are year, artist, title, the title of the album, and the rating. Okay, make sure everything's spelled right. And now I just need to put my values into these variables. So we'll do 2023. Oops. 23. Let's do Chapel Rome. Rise and fall of a Midwest princess. Semicolon. I missed my semicolons up above. We'll give that a 3-star rating. Okay. Fix my semicolons. Missed one there. Missed one there. Missed one there. Okay. Oops, that's a 0, not an O. O. Okay, run that. Nothing will happen that we can see because we have not called the print method of my second favorite album. So if I want the second favorite album to print itself, I will call my second favorite album dot print album. That's the method. Semicolon. And I will call that method, and when I call that method, okay, I need a couple of empty lines in here, but we've got title, artist, date, and rating, okay? Yeah, so that is creating a class, creating an instance of that class, an object which is an instance of that class, putting variables into that object, and then having that object execute a method that does something to its own data. In this case, just prints that data out to the console. What I've done is entirely legal, and it works. But we will shortly see that making your variables public in a Java program is not a great idea, because the whole point of Java is that a object owns its own data, and nobody outside of me should be able to change my data. Unless you have a really good reason for doing so. When you make a class in Java, your instance variables, your fields should be private, so that only you can change them. Now you can write a method that says, hey, you change that data. But you should not be able to change an object's data from the outside. That's just bad Java form. So what we'll do next is we'll take this exact same program. We'll make the variables private instead of public, and we will show how to create methods so that an outside entity somewhere else in the program can tell your object to change or modify its own data without modifying that data directly. And that's the more Java-ish way to handle the instance variables of a class. So we'll do that in the next video.